You cannot underestimate the psychological impact of change that happens on the body and on people. And I use this jokingly with my patients all the time. And I always say, look, if I told you to go over that wall and beat your head into that wall and promised you that you would live 10 years longer, after about 2 days of doing it 10 minutes a day, you'd be like, this is so stupid. How am I going to know if I'm living 10 years longer? But if I told you, go to that wall, beat your head into the wall 10 minutes a day, and you will lose 5 pounds a week. Most of you in this room will do it at least for a week. And if you walk around looking like a unicorn with a big pump knot on your head and that scale goes down by 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, you will continue to do it. Why? Because whatever felt unnatural to you is producing a result, and some of you will want that result so bad that you will do it.
Welcome to the Barination Podcast, a production of the Barination Foundation,
where we fight obesity by living our pillars: movement, mindset, metabolic wellness, and community.
4 pillars, 1 mission. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Barination Podcast. I'm April, one of your hosts, board president, and executive director of the Barination Foundation. Before I tell you about today's episode, I want to share something we are so proud of. This is the first episode produced by the Barination Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, and we could not have gotten here without the charitable support of our first corporate donor, Johnson & Johnson. That is not a small thing. Being first takes vision, and we are genuinely grateful for their belief in our mission to bring knowledge, community, and hope together to support people fighting obesity. Their gift is helping us build the kinds of conversations this community deserves: honest patient stories, expert-guided education, science-backed resources, and stigma-free support. Thank you, Johnson & Johnson, for your donation to the Barination Foundation. So why is this such a big deal that this show is now a production of the Barination Foundation? What does it mean for you, our friends, and our audience members? It means our one job and our only job is you. Every piece of education we produce, every expert we bring to this show, every series we build is driven by science and community need. Donor support funds the mission. It does not touch the message. That's a line we will never cross. And honestly, it's one of our biggest, most important whys behind becoming a foundation. If you want to support this mission and the show, become a donor by clicking the support link in the show notes of this episode. Okay, friends, about today's conversation, Dr. Eric Smith is joining us for a very special 6-part series, Mastering Your Metabolic Health and Weight Management. Dr. Smith is a longtime supporter of Barination and a frequent guest on the show. Each conversation is about the things within our control when it comes to obesity treatment. He put a series on his Instagram a while back about these levers, and our community absolutely lost their minds about it. So we invited him to the show to take a deep dive into the levers and why they're so important on our obesity health journey. And in each conversation, we've invited members of our community to join so they can offer their insights and ahas about each lever. Today's episode is about the first lever, recognizing that obesity is a lifelong chronic disease. And if you don't believe that yet, you will after this conversation. Let's dive in. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Barination Podcast. Today, we are launching an amazing series with Dr. Eric Smith, Melanie Lindell, and other members of our bariatric community. This series is one of many conversations that we're going to be having about the levers of health. Dr. Smith did this amazing Instagram series, right, on these levers. We reached out to him immediately. We're like, can we have you on the podcast? Because we have a lot of questions in our community. They really thought deeply about what you've presented, and they're very excited for us to go deeper into what these levers are. But before we even get started, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Smith and Melanie to introduce themselves.
Well, I am Dr. Eric Smith, for those that don't know me. I'm the medical director of the Kentucky Bariatric Institute here in Central Kentucky. I have a couple other roles, a medical director for both robotics and bariatrics for all of LifePoint Health, which is the health system that I'm a part of. And, I've been a bariatric surgeon for 20 years now, which that doesn't seem possible. I used to think that I was one of those young surgeons, but unfortunately I'm not anymore. I just call it seasoned. I'm seasoned, right? But no, I mean, obviously I take a lot of pride in the fact that KBI was the first practice to partner with Barination, and kind of had this concept of like, I'm pretty proud of what we do in our program. And we have a ton of great resources, multiple dietitians, exercise physiologists, mental health specialists, and go on and on and on. but there's only so much that we can do. And I thought, how great would that be for Barination to just be part of what our patients have access to? And the rest is history.
The rest is history. It has been one of the most amazing partnerships, opportunity to work together. And you said it beautifully. All of the services and the programs that you offer at KBI are top notch. I mean, you'd have to look hard to find a program that does more than you do. But you have 15 minutes at a time or 30 minutes at a time. We have 24 hours, 7 days a week, right? We have experts on staff that deliver that in the moment support. It's just been a phenomenal relationship because it helps people get the care that they need and it keeps them involved with that care, right? Because they know we're talking about a Barination. Oh, you need to circle back with Dr. Smith or Dr. Hayek about that. It's that continuum of care that just allows people to thrive.
Yeah. And I would say as a physician, it is very comforting to know that our patients are going to a place where the information is vetted, where it's moderated. It's a safe space, not just for patients, but it's a safe space for information.
Yes.
Because as we know, it's the wild, wild west out there. And, for the longest time, we probably spent more time talking about what to be weary of, whether it be on Facebook or whatever. And there were lots of people out there that had good intentions, but many times patients were not getting good information.
Yeah.
And so to be able to say, go there, and we know that they're getting good information, and we know they'll be referred back to an expert if it's out of someone's field of expertise. It's so important.
It's extremely important. And we are just so thankful that we've had the opportunity to partner with KBI and you for so many years. And really, it's kind of how this idea and this conversation happened. We've been working together for a long time. And when you start saying really awesome things on your social media, we're like, oh, we'd like to dive deeper. And we know him. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm glad to do it.
Awesome. Well, Melanie Lindell is also joining us today. She is an expert in the Barination community. She's a licensed mental health therapist and a patient herself. Melanie, will you introduce?
Boy, you said most of those things. I also have the privilege of being on the board for the foundation. And one of my roles within Barination, even before we were a foundation, is I get the privilege of vetting our experts and, making sure their licenses, and all the information that they align both with kind of our cultural, norms that we have in Barination, but also that they truly are a licensed expert in the field that we're inviting them to share on. I have 14 years of corporate HR in my background before I became a therapist. And so it's been neat to be able to blend my patienthood and the different areas I bring both as a trauma therapist and my expertise in HR and compliance into more of a full circle experience professionally and personally in Barination.
It's been amazing. Really, we have the dream team here on screen. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with the two of you because of the levers. And let me explain a little bit. So the title of this series is The Levers of Control, Mastering Your Metabolic Health and Weight Management with Dr. Smith. There are 6 levers in total. So we are going to be taking a deep dive into what they are. And I'm just going to read them from my notebook here because I don't want to mess them up. The first lever is accepting and acknowledging that obesity is a chronic disease. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The second lever is whole food nutrition. The third, recovery, so stress and sleep. The fourth, movement is medicine. The fifth, controlling what we can control. And the sixth is ongoing care and treatment, because as you're going to learn today, obesity is a lifelong chronic and progressive disease. And if we are not pulling that lever of ongoing care and treatment, we're missing one of the biggest things that remains within our control. So today's conversation is really going to focus on that first one. Obesity is a chronic and lifelong disease. So let's start there. The first question that I want you to answer, Dr. Smith, is why can many people not exercise and diet their way out of obesity?
Oh, well, that's a loaded question, right?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that we still have that argument, but I think with very educated people, we still have that argument. And there's a bunch of different directions that you can go with that. But, I think we have to first separate the difference between someone who wants to lose weight and someone who doesn't want to be obese anymore. There's a lot of little things that we can do to lose weight. And we're not talking about somebody who wants to lose 10 or 15 pounds and get ready for summer, or even someone who's obese and wants and can lose 10 or 15 pounds. Because what happens is I think when people see that can happen without an intervention, they're like, well, what's the difference? If you can do it for 15 and you just keep doing it, it's going to eventually turn to 30 and it's going to turn to 60. And it doesn't quite work that way. Is it physically possible? Yes, anything is possible, right? I mean, we can all do really rare things, but we also we have to make sure patients don't understand that they're not the exception, they're the rule. And I think that's probably one of the first things that I talk to patients about when they come in to see us, is getting them to understand that you all in this room, not somebody's trying to lose 10 pounds, somebody who's battling with obesity and trying to conquer that disease, your chances to lose enough weight to conquer that disease, meaning to not become obese or not be obese anymore, is as low as 0.5 to 1%. Some data will say as high as 2 to 5%. Pretty crappy no matter what, right? And so I want them to understand there's nothing wrong with you. You're actually in the majority, not the minority. And for many people, it's just like that sigh of relief to say, oh, okay, now I'm willing to listen. When someone over time, it's not uncommon that people have a triggering event that maybe kicks it off. You have a child, you go through menopause, COVID got blamed for a lot of stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
COVID created everything. But whatever that is, I was just meeting with a guy today in Michigan, virtually for our first meeting. And, he referenced COVID. He referenced a horrible relationship, and he had a former person he was in a relationship with who he lost, a lot of different things. And so what happens is we identify this issue that caused it. And we think, okay, well, that was caused, and my behaviors around that event were probably not the healthiest in the world. So it has to be 100% reversible if I reverse those behaviors. And yes, those behaviors can contribute to the event. But once someone becomes obese, their body composition is that of someone obese. Their body's not the same as it was before. There's hormonal issues that go on. There are endocrine issues that go on. Maybe they've become diabetic, and maybe they're on medications that make it harder to lose weight. And so no matter what path you took to get to the point of disease, we have to get people to stop looking back to say, well, there was something that caused it, so it has to be self-inflicted. I think what we have to do is be really honest with people. And I always like to say, look, most diseases that we as physicians treat have some form of behavioral implications, that our behavior influenced how hard or how easy it is to treat the disease. It's no different than diabetes. It's no different than hypertension, hyperlipidemia. We could go on and on. And the best example I used, I said, heck, if we were going to hold it against patients that they had a disease that was seen as self-inflicted, then why would we ever treat someone who has lung cancer? Because 90% of those people participated in a behavior that allowed that cancer to happen. But we also know that I can tell you, I know a 90-year-old lady that smoked 2 packs of cigarettes since she was in her teens, especially you come to Kentucky and come to the South, and that's not uncommon, where tobacco was a huge, part of the economy. And why did somebody who smoked 10 years succumb to lung cancer? And she's still kicking at this point. You're like, why am I going to tell you to stop? Right? So there's a disease there, right? There definitely was factors that she could control, which is what we're talking about. But sometimes it's out of your control.
Yes.
And so I think the reason that I got really inspired to do the whole series is, and April, you and I talked about this in private, is the social media platform is just flooded with all these things about what we can't control. It's unfair that the medications are so expensive. It's unfair that insurances don't cover it. It's unfair that some insurances don't cover bariatric surgery, or I can't afford it because my insurance doesn't cover it. And we talk about all the things that we can't control. What if we all said, I'm going to control the controllables, and then man, if one of these treatments becomes available, I'm going to hit the ground running. But if it doesn't, I'm still on a journey. And I wanted to be really careful when I did this because I thought someone's going to use this against me. And a few people tried to, of like, wait a second. You're basically saying all these things that don't require medication and surgery influence our weight. So why don't we all just do these things? This is the secret. And that's not what I was saying, but I'm also not afraid to admit that these things have influence in it, whether it's somebody who's had an intervention and is not seeing the results that they're hoping for, or they've had an intervention and they're setting themselves up to need another one and another one and another one if they don't clean this part up too.
Yeah.
So controlling the controllables is, I'll be honest with you, a great way to look at life in general.
1,000%. And before, I know, Melanie, you have a lot to add on this because you have become an expert in pulling those levers that are within your control. Dr. Smith, I'd like you to answer that, right? So if somebody listening to this or watching this, they say, okay, so, if all of these things really matter, then why surgery in the first place? And I think you've already answered it, but let's just nail this coffin.
Right. So let's break it down into practicality. When we say the chances of someone losing enough weight with, quote, diet and exercise alone, that's a very vague thing, right? I hate the word diet because we all know it's just a way of eating. It's not like a crash diet.
Yep.
I think most of us know what we mean by that. The percentage of success is extremely low. That's not saying that everybody who followed that, quote, diet and exercise followed a specific regimen. That's not saying that everybody tracked their calories. That's saying a mismatch of people that made a conscious effort to change the way that they ate and exercise. But you have to acknowledge there's human behavior involved. Now, so we could say, okay, well, let's go in and let's fix the human behavior problem. Good luck with that. That's not going to happen. So it's real world, I think that's why there's been so much conversation about the real world data of bariatric surgery and the real world data of medication, because that's part of human behavior. We have to take that in. So did everybody who tried, quote, diet and exercise alone do it long enough, do it the right way, do it perfectly? No, they didn't, but they did it like a human does it. And so that's real world data of how that ends up. The fact of the matter is it's not ending up very good. And so we have clearly identified that's not enough. So I think really what I'm saying is if I could create a near perfect scenario of the controllables, here's what I would tell you. While at the current moment of your life, you can't control the other stuff, let's dig deeper into this and let's see what happens. Because if we don't do these things, I promise you, I know what will happen. This may not get you where you need to be. It may not create 100+ pounds of weight loss for many of you out there. But what it will do is it will give you progress versus the alternative, which will only cause you to go backwards.
Yes. And Melanie and I can speak personally to this. We both were very active before bariatric surgery. We both naturally had a whole food diet. And when we went into surgery, our bodies were prepared for what was coming. But if we stop doing those things after surgery, we're going to be right back to where we were before. And I know, Melanie, you can speak directly to this. You've seen the power of pulling and working these levers consistently in your journey.
I think I'll back up though. I think one of the wrestling matches, I can say, at least me personally, I didn't grow up hearing that obesity was a disease, it was all presented first with a morality around it. So I think when something is, presented like, this is a moral issue that, you're an obese person and that it's just a series of bad decisions you made. So just make better decisions, that somehow that there's a formula that will equal not being obese. And then when I went back and looked through all my pictures, like I have a picture saved on my phone that I see every morning, and it's 6 months before I had surgery and didn't even know I was going to have surgery. And it was me doing an 8K before they tore the viaduct down here in Seattle. And just that realization of like, I was doing an 8K. Right. Like, and I mean, believe me, I was in pain when I was done, but just that sense of
you're doing it.
I didn't fit the mold of laying around, eating pizza, ice cream, all
Right.
of those things. And so I had to start, that was one of those places of healing, even for me, when I started to be able to say, okay, like you actually have a chronic disease. And, and I think one of the things that, because of my work in the behavioral health side, right, is that so many people, food was a comfort long before it ever became a problem, because food met a need that was meant to be met in relationship. And when those needs don't get met, and I use a lot of work by a psychiatrist named Dan Siegel about all of us need to be seen, soothed, safe, and secure. And those needs are meant to be met in relationship. But when they're not there, you find surrogates, right? So then when a new stress comes along, our brain tells us, go grab that thing because that helped last time. So
Yeah.
building those new neural pathways it's hard work, right? And it requires sort of owning, like, what do I go to under stress? So I know my vulnerability so that I can begin to build a new association with food, a new association of lowering my stress, meeting the needs that are meant to be met in a relationship.
Yeah. And I think, you asked this at the beginning, and I kind of came more from a conceptual thing, but, from a pure science standpoint, getting back to why are we so unsuccessful with losing weight with, quote, diet and exercise alone? There's science behind that. Your body responds to dieting very different, because dieting more often than not is creating calorie deficit, right? And what we all have to agree upon from the get-go is calorie deficits are required to create weight loss. And I look at a room full of people today. Today was my clinic day, and I had 20 people sitting in there plus family members, and I'm like, everybody in this room is capable of losing weight. Everybody in this room is capable of gaining weight. You have a number, and if you exceed it, it is physically impossible for you to not gain weight. And if you stay below your number, the net at the end of the day, it is physically impossible that you won't lose weight. The question is, where does it come from? And so what people typically do when they, quote, diet is they just create a calorie deficit. They don't care where those calories come from. They say, I want to stay below a certain number. And maybe they've done the hard work to figure out what is that number that it needs to be. They look at their Apple Watch and say, I'm going to see how many more calories I can take off of this number. Or at the gym that, I probably can't say brand names, but the ones that love to show you how many calories you burn and things like that. And I'm not being sarcastic, that's helpful. It's very inaccurate many times, but they look at that and they say, okay, I'm creating a deficit. And if I continue to create a deficit, let's say the people that work really hard at it and actually track it, create a deficit, in time, you will lose weight. Well, here, let me just throw some things out there. What happens is when you start losing weight, your body says, wait a second, this is not normal. I'm losing weight, because you're probably also doing is losing weight from a variety of places, both body fat and muscle mass. Your body doesn't see danger from obesity. Your labs do, your heart does, your lungs do, but your body as a whole in metabolism doesn't typically see, this is bad, I want to reverse it. But many times your body will see weight loss if you're not careful, because the way we achieve it many times is not structured. It's a pure calorie deficit. And so, the two big hormones, I don't want to get super scientific because I want this to be, digestible by everybody. But, the two hormones that I like to get people to understand is there's a hormone called ghrelin and there's a hormone called leptin. And just think of ghrelin as a hormone that basically, it's our hunger hormone. Some of the surgeries that we do, actually all the surgeries that we do, it impacts the production of ghrelin. It decreases ghrelin. Ghrelin tells us we're hungry. I saw where somebody one time says ghrelin is your body texting your brain saying that it wants food or needs food, right? I mean, whatever.
Perfect.
I don't think we need
Makes
to
all the sense. Yep.
Right.
Got it.
But here's what's interesting. Like when we do, and I don't want to get caught off on how surgery works because that's not what this part's for. But when we do a certain procedures, like a sleeve, for example, large amount of ghrelin is made in the greater curve of the stomach. It's also made in the duodenum. It's made in other places too. We don't take it all away. Your body always smarts things too. But if I reduce the amount of ghrelin, then many people for that first year and a half may say, I didn't really feel as hungry. Now there's
Mhm.
difference in hunger and cravings, but I didn't really feel as hungry. Some people say I had to remind myself to eat. That's part of the problem too. People don't eat enough. But when you start losing weight with a calorie deficit, what happens is many times your body actually increases ghrelin levels because it says, whoa, this is not normal. I need to stop this process. I'm going to raise ghrelin. And you make a person who's trying to create a calorie deficit more hungry. When people have been obese for a long period of time, your fat cells make something called leptin. That's supposed to be the alternative. It's supposed to be the one that says, we got plenty of this stuff. We got plenty of fat here. Chill out. Don't eat so much. You're not hungry, shutting hunger down. But when people have been obese for over a long period of time, there is something called leptin resistance to where it's not as sensitive anymore. And so you have these people that are going through these hormonal changes. Again, not the person who isn't leptin resistant, who's trying to lose 10 pounds, who's trying to get summer fit, someone who's battled with obesity. And so your body doesn't sense that you creating a calorie deficit is a good thing. And many times when people do create calorie deficits, it's not a good thing because there's no structure behind it, right? They simply just say, I want to create a deficit. And if you're somebody who does realize the importance of something like strength training and how important that is for muscle mass and things like that, you can strength train on a regular basis 4 or 5 times a week. And I promise you, it'll take a long time for that scale to go down. It may actually go up. And here's the funny part. It's not because you gained all this muscle mass, because I promise you it's really hard to do. As a guy who makes testosterone, it's hard to build muscle. For women, it's even harder. But you lift heavy. You lift heavy, you feel that burning in your muscle. Everybody likes to say, oh, that's lactic acid. That lactic acid's there for a couple hours. But you create these micro tears in your muscle, right? That's how you grow muscle. So you create these micro tears and your body comes in to heal those tears and fill in those gaps. But what also happens? That creates inflammation. What's the inflammation do? It creates fluid shifts into the muscle. How do you make those muscles grow? Well, you got to feed those muscles. So your job is to eat appropriately and put glycogen, which is stored sugar, into those muscles. Now, how many people creating a calorie deficit after they lift are going to go eat 2 cups of rice? They're probably not.
Yeah, no.
So now you have people who are focused on a calorie deficit, eating, staying away from everything that pop culture has told us is bad for us and will cause us to gain weight because it's got a carb or something in it. And their nutrition is so poor. Why do we think our body says this ain't normal? Because the way many of us go about it isn't.
Yeah. Well, and as you explained earlier, right? People with the disease of obesity's body programming is different. And the only thing that can address that difference is medical intervention, right? Be it surgery or medication or both. But when you onboard those things, all of these other levers that you're talking about work as they should, right? Like nutrition, movement, focusing on your mindset, all of those things that you're already doing are actually going to result in the things that you're hoping that they will result in, because you've dealt with the thing that has kept them in check for so long, which is the disease of obesity.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is I think you cannot, I know Melanie will agree with me on this, you cannot underestimate the psychological impact of change that happens on the body and on people. And I use this jokingly with my patients all the time. And I always say, look, if I told you to go over that wall and beat your head into that wall and promised you that you would live 10 years longer, after about 2 days of doing it 10 minutes a day, you'd be like, this is so stupid. How am I going to know if I'm living 10 years longer? But if I told you, go to that wall, beat your head into the wall 10 minutes a day, and you will lose 5 pounds a week. Most of you in this room will do it at least for a week. And if you walk around looking like a unicorn with a big pump knot on your head and that scale goes down by 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, you will continue to do it. Why? Because whatever felt unnatural to you is producing a result. And some of you will want that result so bad that you will do it. We are motivated by results, right?
Yeah.
We are motivated when we see change. Why do people stop going to the gym? Because the gym is not going to create change quickly at all. And I think we'll probably talk about this later. The gym is not where you actually lose weight.
Yeah,
I hate to say that, but it is not.
Yeah, we know it's a different
and
place.
It's not that it's not important. It's extremely important. but it is not where you lose weight. And so you go to this gym, you take time out of your day, you're exhausted, you're looking around, you feel insecure, it doesn't matter what the reason is, and then you get no result. Why would you start doing that? You won't. And so I think we cannot underestimate the psychological benefit of when you see an intervention take place and feel better. If you took an antibiotic and all it did was make you nauseous, but your symptoms didn't go away, you'll probably stop it too.
Yeah. And I think that's why we see so much frustration at the 12 to 18 to 24 month mark, because you stop seeing results as a patient, right? No matter what you're doing. And you said it on one of the podcasts, and it's 1,000% right? A stall in our weight is the goal. The goal is we find that weight and we stall out. But once you get there, you're like, no. I am no. And
because you've been motivated by results, and when the results stop, even though if you're near that end game, you get scared and you're like, this is what's drugged me along. This is what caused me to make this choice. This is what caused me to show up at the gym, if you want to use that. This is what caused me to make that choice of whole foods versus the snacks that I used to do, show up to my appointments, whatever that may be, do the head work. And now that goes away and you're like, uh-oh.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that is in those first, 12 to 8, assuming you have a pretty typical recovery process, you have a lot more what would be kind of autopilot, right? And
absolutely.
And I think, like, I laugh, I gave a lot of, credit to my dad. He was a cop and he made me learn how to drive a stick shift. And I feel like those first 12 to 18 months, you're in an automatic, and now all of a sudden you got to drive a stick shift, right? And it's clunky, and you kill the car and you do all these things because now I have to be more intentional, more mindful, and I would say more engaged, once you pass those 12, 18, 24 months. And I think sometimes many people don't even realize how much of autopilot, how much the intervention, did more for you than you had to do for yourself. And now it's got to come, like, you got to be driving that car. And this is just like, it's clunky, to get started and get going on it.
Well, and as a patient, you start to change, right? And all these people come up to you and say, you're doing so great. Your doctor says you're doing so great. The numbers are going down. And you start to look around, and at first you may think, I don't know that I'm really doing a whole lot, but you realize, I am doing great. And you know what? I am eating less. I mean, you're pretty much, you have to early on. You don't have room for it.
Oh yeah. No.
You know what? I am doing pretty good. Those things are happening. But what you don't realize, like you said, is you're doing not a ton. And then it stops. And now you're working harder to get just stability. I tell patients this all the time. I always say, look, if I could pick one thing that I'd want to do in my free time outside of spend time with my family, away from my job, you guys know I love to golf. And I would love to be a professional golfer. I never will be. I love to compete with myself. I love to compete with my friends. It's one of those things, as you get older, you can still do it, and be active and work on practice. I love it. But let's say, I said, if I went, I made a post about this, talking about the easy way out. Like I said, if you have weight loss surgery, you must be a cheater. And, headline news says Scotty Scheffler, after he won the Masters, is a cheater because he's got a golf coach and he hired a personal trainer. Like, no, he used the resources that work.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. So, but if I looked at a coach and I said, give me the top 10 things that I have to do to give myself a chance to be a professional golfer. And if I did 1 through 5, and the next thing I knew, I got my tour card, what's the odds of me doing 6 through 10?
Yeah. None.
I'm not going to, because this must be enough.
Yeah.
I'm not bad. I'm not lazy. I'm not non-compliant. I'm not a cheater. I just saw I'm pretty efficient, right? And I'm like, okay, this worked. I'm here. Good. I'm moving on. And that's what happens with weight loss surgery, is our people many times not hitting some of those parameters from a nutritional standpoint, their vitamins, following up their appointments, but the results are coming. And it's very easy to become complacent. The double whammy is not only do you become complacent, you can lose weight the wrong way that actually sets yourself up for failure for the same reason that dieting by itself doesn't work. And the next thing you know, you've lost the 100 pounds, but 35 to 45% of it, whether it's medication or surgery, came from muscle mass.
Yeah.
And you now have a calorie number reset that is, you have a body that says, uh-oh, I don't like this. I'm in survival mode. Ghrelin levels are high. I'm a leptin. I'm leptin resistant because I've lived obese for years. And oh, by the way, my calorie number used to be 1,800 and now it's 1,400 because I've lost so much muscle mass.
Yep.
And I'm saying I'm eating less than I've ever eaten in my entire life. And now the scale's going back up. And what the heck's going on? So that phenomenon, even after an intervention, when the intervention isn't done the right way with these controllables, like what we're talking about, is no different than what happens to that person who's trying to lose weight and actually makes them more prone to not only regaining, but regaining.
Yep. We want to take a moment to recognize two outstanding organizations whose early support made the Barination Foundation possible. Johnson & Johnson came in as our very first corporate donor. And if you know anything about nonprofits, you know how big of a deal that is. It means they believe in our mission enough to help us live it. We do not take that lightly. We also want to recognize Dr. Joe Cribbins and the Texas Center for Bariatrics and Advanced Surgery, who became our first practice supporter of the Barination Foundation and have shown up for this community from day one. Compassionate, enthusiastic, and genuinely invested in what happens to patients beyond the clinic walls. Thank you, Johnson & Johnson, Dr. Joe, and Heather, for believing in this mission. We are building something meaningful here, and you are a part of that story. I feel like this was a huge topic at the American Society of Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery conference this year, ASMBS, right? There's never been a better time on the planet to treat the disease of obesity because of all of the different treatment options that are out there. But we can get ourselves into trouble if we are not working with a holistic care team, because just based on the first 40 minutes of this conversation, hopefully you're understanding the disease of obesity impacts every facet of your life. And as the disease progresses, you more than likely are going to need different types of treatment intervention. But if you are only offered a single track of intervention, let's say medication, and you're not working with a team, when that medication stops working, right, you've reached its maximum efficacy or you lose access to it, you have no other treatment option that you can onboard because this was the only one that was presented for you. And so much goes into this disease. It is an extremely paradoxical disease, just like what you were talking about. People sign up for obesity treatment, surgery or meds, because you are looking for a little ease in this process. You are dying on the vine. You are desperate. You are out of your mind frustrated, right? Because of that, what we've been talking about, only 2 to 5% can diet and exercise their way out of obesity. So you do want some ease. And then you onboard treatment and you go, oh my God, this is what people who don't have obesity like look like and think like and feel like. And all of a sudden you are over the moon excited because it does seem easy. And you don't want to say that because everybody's told you it's the easy way out. And you're like, oh crap. Yeah, no, I'm just going to say I'm working hard, even though I feel like I'm not. And then all of a sudden you reach that wall, right? The disease progresses, which it does, and there is no cure. And then all of a sudden you are left kind of right back where you were before going, oh crap. I actually have to pull the levers now. Yeah.
And the intentionality isn't there from the beginning behind those controllables, right?
Yes.
You know, I was talking to somebody the other day. I think it was like a car mechanic or something. And I think we made a post about it. I don't think it's been posted yet, but I was typical in my car thinking of stuff and started rambling along. It was talking about the word friction, right? And friction sounds like this bad thing. Like if you have friction between people, he was talking about friction and brakes. And he was talking about as a patient, he's like, doc, I need you to increase the friction on my brakes when it comes to food, you know, just make it. And I started thinking about the word friction, and friction sounds like this bad thing. I think friction more often than not is a good thing, because we tend to say, it sounds warm and fuzzy to say, we need to improve access to care for patients. And that is a statement I think we all would agree with. You got to be really careful with that, because it depends on what kind of care that is and how that care is monitored and maintained. When you remove friction, you remove work. When you remove friction, you remove resistance. You know, when you remove friction, you remove the things that callous us in a good way. You know, our scars are what makes us who we are. We learn lessons about ourselves. We learn lessons about what works and what doesn't work. And we have removed friction, which sounds great, for access to obesity treatment when it comes to medications. I can get on any multitude of apps right now as a person who does not qualify for it and get them in a matter of days. But what am I not getting? I'm not getting the fundamentals and the controllables that are required to give me the best chance to make these successful or to lose it the right way.
Yeah.
No medication, no pharmaceutical company requires it. And even the people out there that say that they have all these resources, I'm here to tell you the majority of them, some that I think are very, very smart and well-trained obesity medicine specialists who have their own version, it's not mandatory. But wait, these things, if they were easy, why isn't everybody not doing them? Why are we having to spend time talking about the importance of sleep, the importance of nutrition? How much time do they spend on whole nutrition? Not a lot.
Yeah.
They talk about calorie deficit. Some of them love to get on social media and talk about that stuff's overblown. And here we are, we've removed the friction, we've improved the access, but we are not reinforcing these tools to make people understand that there is a right and a wrong way to do this.
Yeah. And I think with that friction and like, you know, April hears me say this all the time, is like, you know, what's the next right thing? You got to have something come at you to then propel you to make a change or stay the course or whatever it is. But that force has to come in front of you to sort of like, you have to reckon with it to go, okay, what is the next right thing in this moment? And I think, and I know, you know, a KBI is one of those places, like who you're tied to really matters. Like I will forever be grateful. I didn't know what I know now when I landed it with the care team that I have. But the very first thing my surgeon said to me when I met him was, you are a patient for life. And then he said two more things. And then I'll be 7 years out in August that I've never forgotten. He goes, every pound you lose now will only make your surgery safer. And every habit you establish now will only serve you post-op. And those things have stayed with me all these years and has helped me, you know, be as successful. And I don't even love that word. I would say as healthy as I've been able to stay for all of these years. And I also had, you know, my dietitian that's, you know, tied to my clinic as well. Like she has said so many important things, like, you know, this idea of like, you have to learn to get comfortable within a 10-pound range because of inflammation, hormones, especially as a woman. Like you've got to start to accept that your body is going to do this. And I think as someone who's lived with obesity, we get really scared when we see one number go, oh, well, that means I'm going all the way back. Right.
Yeah.
You know, and then, you know, the other, you know, part that she, you know, is forever saying, you know, to me is this idea of like your relationship with your body, you know, needs to come from a place of acceptance. Right. And I think we don't trust our bodies, right? Because, well, if I could trust my body, I would have never been obese, but you got to start trusting that you have a disease. You got to start leaning into these things in a way that allows you to like reconcile some of the distortions and replace those distortions with truth. And so deficit alone is not enough, but like it's how much are you leaning into it and what quality of nutrition you're bringing to your body.
Yeah. What your surgeon told you at the end is the most powerful thing. And it's so true. I steal this from Atomic Habits all the time, that goals bring short-lived happiness. Habits bring lifelong results. And when there's nothing wrong with having goals, but when we are motivated by goals will get achieved. And goals are gone now. You know, if you have a goal weight and you hit your goal weight, now what's your motivation?
Yep.
The controllables and the levers that I talked about in the series are is habits. But people got tired of me calling them habits. So I had to find another fancier way to get them to engage a little bit, right? The habit of how you eat, the habit of how you sleep, the habit of how you track your nutrition, the habit of how you control, you know, your stress. Sleep is such an easy thing. People say, well, I just can't sleep. I sleep horribly. And then you start to ask, and they've never done anything to try to influence it. You know, because they want that result, right? You know, how often you put your screen down an hour and a half before you go to bed? Well, I mean, I tried that one time. No, That's not a habit though. How do we establish habits, And it's exactly right. Those habits are the controllables. Those controllables are celebrated when they become a habit, and you can't call something a habit unless it's regular. Accepting that those are the only way you'll get the results that you want takes your mind away from, I'm only going to continue to do this if I get this visual reward, and puts you in a headspace of I'll continue to do this because I love the simple joy of a habit, and I can't call it a habit if I don't do it every day.
Absolutely. I mean, I got checked by a sleep specialist, years ago, and I've always had trouble sleeping, right? And I do have onset and maintenance insomnia and sleep apnea, all the things, right? And so he gave me my CPAP machine 6 years ago. I was actually diagnosed after I lost the majority of my weight with sleep apnea, so who knows what it was prior, but I still qualified for a machine.
You probably don't want to know.
But we'll just say it was bad, right? And so, but I fought him on this. I hate the title. Why do we have to call it sleep hygiene? It just, but basically my sleep hygiene stunk,
You're a dirty sleeper.
Right. And so he's like, you need to go to bed at the same time, and you need to get up at the same time every day, including the weekends. And I fought him. And then I think it was 3 years ago, I went in, because I go in every year, and he looks over my little report or whatever. And I remember him doing this. And then he looks at me and he goes, so what happened here? And I said, well, I mean, I guess I listened to you, and it kind of worked, and it was just, and he was so playful about it, because all my numbers were like, like I had 100% compliance, I had all the hours that he was after, all the things. And for an entire year, and I do overall, I still do it. But I think that healthy is so much quieter than we want it to be. We're looking for the flashy, we're looking for this, and, whole food is quiet. It's not sexy, having a bedtime, as an adult, like, is not sexy, because we want to, like, oh, when I'm an adult, like I'm going to stay up as late as I want. And
my friends, you ask my friends, I could have so many friends that would tell you right now that my saying that I used to say was, you can sleep when you're dead.
Yeah.
That's what I used to say. I mean, when we would travel, we're on the weekends, we'd go somewhere fun. You can sleep when you're dead. My friends were tired. Like, I went nonstop, and I get it. And, I don't think that I've gotten old and boring. I think I've become very intentional, because I love this life, and I love the way it makes me feel. This thing right here, for me to track that sleep. And it was so, like, I thought I get up so early during the week. Why I need to do that on the weekend?
Right.
And it was crazy how that one little change for me, that 5 a.m., whether I'm traveling, and it's tough sometimes. I mean, I was on the West Coast 2 times in 3 weeks. Then I was in Texas, but just following it, and this thing waking me up at the same time and keeping that sleep consistency.
Yep.
But people don't believe it, because it's not a surgery. It's not a medicine. It's not an intervention. And they also, you and I both know, it won't happen overnight.
No. And I think that's the thing, is like healthy is also really slow, right?
Yes.
It's and nobody wants, we're in a microwave culture, like, we want things in 30 seconds. We want immediate results to keep us going. And I think this is where having truth, science, a good team around you, like, I have been fed like really solid science-backed information, from my team. Even like, I love my surgeon, and he is friction for me, because he's always calling me to more things. Like a few years ago, when he said, you have the best fitness of all my patients, and we need to talk about your age. And I'm like, hey, right? And basically he said, you love to move. And he goes, we both know that I need new knees, and I've known that. I've had 5 surgeries, 3 ACL replacements, all the things. Like, it's on its last thread. And so he goes, my concern is, like, when you're no longer able to run, that you will drop into a depression, much like someone who retires without a plan. So he brought up, what do you think about swimming? And my response was so snarky. I said, well, I can't even breathe with a face in the water. And he goes, well, that can be taught. And he goes, my daughter's doing it. I'm like, what? She's like 10, and so I was just, but he got in my head just enough that I reached out to the local aquatic center here on the island and said, "Yeah, anybody that can teach me how to breathe in my face in the water," right? And now I swim every Friday. I had got to do my first triathlon, which was not his goal for me to add a triathlon into the things, but I was like, I'm going to get you back. I'm going to go do a triathlon. But he's always forecasting. And I think that's the other part of health is we've got to forecast for friction, for changes, for things. And I think I also am a big fan of Atomic Habits. Just got done doing the bariatric version I created for us in Barination, and I think one of the things about, that space is you got to build your plan in real energy, not in ideal energy.
Yeah.
So you got to build it when you're having a bad day. How can you still maintain a habit, or how can you still lean in to some version of health? Not when everything is perfect and there's nothing coming at you. You've got to build a way to stay healthy with the acknowledgement that life is going to life.
Absolutely. And things are going to come at you. And, there's so much discussion about longevity and wellness and things like that. But what we do to our bodies now is how we prepare ourselves when we are 70. And I hate to say this, but newsflash, when you hit 70, if you decide to do it then, it's too late. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but deciding to adopt healthy habits when you're 70 because you're really struggling to get around, that's not going to cut it. Like how we live when we're 40 and we're 50 prepares us to how we're able to live when we're 70 and we're 80. And, I think that, it is, you said it so perfectly that healthy is slow. It is slow. There's no way around it. But again, that goes back to that friction thing. Sometimes things need to be slow.
Yeah.
And changing your mindset to really being proud of yourself, that you show up consistently and letting, I always tell people, I want you to celebrate your habits like you do when the scale changes. If you learn to celebrate your habits like you do when the scale changes, the scale will change in the direction that you want it to. But the most rewarding thing that you should have is that scale change. And for people who have been through weight loss intervention or have lost weight, maybe they were one of the 1 or 2, 5% that did it on their own. It's so easy when everybody says, "Man, you look great." And the Instagram get all kinds of likes when you look different in the past 6 to 12 months. But when you post a picture of you 10 years out versus 5 years out and you look exactly the same, it doesn't get a whole lot of attention.
No.
Especially if you're one of those people like me that doesn't have the attention span to read the caption to see what the point of the post is, right? And if that's your motivation, if that's what gets you excited by what everybody else is telling you, you're setting yourself up for failure. Finding that joy in the habits, all that stuff can be icing on the cake.
Yeah.
But finding that joy in those habits is finding the joy within yourself. And that's a mental health concept for people. Because just like we don't want people to let their value be determined by others, because sometimes it's not very good, we also don't want their value to be determined by others, because sometimes they become very dependent upon it when it happens to say the things that we hope it will.
Yes. Well, and I wrote about this recently. Living as somebody with the disease of obesity, I very much bought into and enjoyed that day one energy, right? I was always trying something else. I was always trying something new, right? There was something else on the horizon that was coming. And that day one energy is addicting, right? Because there's just a lot of fun things. You get to plan, you get to think, right? You're doing all the things. With bariatric surgery, what I really realized is, that was my last day one. And if I'm trying to create day one energy in this part of the journey, I'm not going to be successful, right? It is the boring stuff. We talked about this in Atomic Habits. It is the boring stuff. It's these levers. But when you really wrap your mind around weight loss surgery is not really weight loss surgery, it's metabolic surgery, right? Weight loss is kind of a happy side effect. What you really are dealing with are the metabolic issues that are going on. So this journey is a total mindset shift on how you think about yourself, your weight, your health, why you're doing the things that you're doing, because that's where you get your life back. If you're just doing the day one energy thing, right, before and even after treatment, it's not going to equate in the results that you want. And I'm the living proof of that. I just got my ass checked by my PCP. I'm frustrated with my weight. All these things, right, are going off the rail. And the very first thing he said to me was, "Well, how's your exercise?" And I was like, oh, yeah, it's great. I walk my dog 2-3 miles a day. Everything's fine. He said, no. Like, are you sweating? Do you need to take a shower? And I said, no. His answer was, well, you need to start doing that. My answer was no. And he said, okay, well, then we need to talk about how you're going to be okay living at 210 pounds for the rest of your life. And I was like, I'm going to smack you across your head right now. Right. But I needed that gut check, because for me, it's like, I don't want to pull these levers if I'm not sure they're going to work. Right. Why would I go through the energy of pulling the lever if I'm not guaranteed a result? And he just very calmly said, well, we have evidence of what is going to happen when you don't.
Right.
And I was like,
And, I think, the exercise thing, I'm just biting my tongue because I know that's a whole different episode that we'll talk about more. But there's a statement that I've been seeing more and more from a handful of people who are, obesity medicine specialists, specifically and talking about the meds. And I'm not quoting a particular person, but I'm paraphrasing. So, forgive me if somebody puts 2 and 2 together and figures out who said it and I'm screwing it up slightly, but I'm pretty close. Where they love to say, yes, lifestyle changes are necessary, but the medications help make those lifestyle choices easier. And I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
That is extremely dangerous to the point that it needs to be stopped, because what happens is exactly what Melanie said earlier. So this is my autopilot. My medication is my autopilot. And as much as I hate the word discipline, people don't have discipline. People know what we mean by that. Medication doesn't give you, quote, discipline. Medication can blunt that dopamine response for a period of time. But if that is the only source of that dopamine response, it can blunt your dopamine response for everything in life. Your sex life could suck. Your nutrition could suck. Your joy in life could suck. There's all sorts of things, because now you've taken away the ownership of owning the commitment to, I'm not hungry, but I know I need this much protein because this is what my body requires. So letting that tell you, I don't want fast food because it quieted my food noise, is absolutely asinine, in my opinion, to be able to say that. Will it have an impact early on? Absolutely. It may do that. But what you've done is you've bypassed the controllables.
Yeah.
And that is a very slippery slope to give patients the impression, whether they have access to the meds forever or not. It's a really slippery slope if they lose access, which we see that happen a lot with patients. But it's even for the patients who have access to that, because listen, our bodies are smart. People get exposed to medications all the time. Dosages go up. There is basic pharmacology, and I by no means pretend to be a scientist or a pharmacologist, but we know basic pharmacology says when you continually stimulate receptors, your body will adapt. If receptors stay stimulated, they'll downregulate themselves. If they stay inhibited, they will upregulate themselves. If you're stimulating a receptor and getting a good benefit from that, there is likelihood over time that many people will have downregulation of that and may respond less to that medication if it's not in conjunction with doing the controllables to allow that tool to work for you. Same thing with surgery. I'm not picking on the meds either, but there's never going to be a day that you're going to hear me say the surgery will make your decisions for you.
Right. I think the part that I can, I think about kind of the psych side of it, right, is that for people that have battled obesity, they've tried all the, every diet under the sun, this and that and the other. I think where, metabolic surgery and, medications and different things, you can go from resignation, and it can be the thing that sparks hope, but it doesn't produce the action, right? And so it's like we can give the spot for what it does do, but then you've got to lean into that with habits, actions, and all that. It isn't the action. It is what sparks hope to take action, with your life.
Yeah. I really feel like the 2 words that kind of summarize this conversation today is hope and friction, right? Treatment gives us hope, but that friction is what actually allows the other levers, the other forms of treatment to work as effectively as they can. And you have to have a marriage of the two, of treatment and the levers. And those things have to continue to grow with you as the disease does as well. But if you can't even pull that first lever, which is acknowledging that obesity is a disease and it requires medical intervention, then you're going to find yourself stuck there. And I know there are plenty of people who are watching or listening to this saying, well, I'm just going to try this diet once more. I'm going to try, this thing. The research is clear. 2 to 5% of people can work out or eat their way past obesity. And if you don't know if you have obesity, make an appointment, right? Go into your PCP, make that appointment with anybody and just say, I would like to know, do I have the disease of obesity or not?
Yeah.
Start there, because it's where it all begins.
And that is something that we at KBI, we changed completely. I think you have to evolve. Treatments have evolved.
Yep.
You have to evolve in life. If you're not changing, you're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we did some things that was kind of ahead of our time of the way we saw patients, the way we educated patients. But we kind of hit this point where middle of last year, I just sat down with our team and I said, we got to change the way we're doing things. It's different now. And it took us a while because we had to redo our entire education. We had to redo our entire process, videos, all this stuff before we could launch it and do it the right way. So if you come to KBI and you look, you won't find, you might archived on YouTube, but we no longer have a seminar that talks about sleeve gastrectomy, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, SADE, DS, revision. You won't find any of that anymore. What you'll find is you'll find a 20 to 25 minute podcast where Dr. Hayek and I sat down, we just talked about obesity. The closest we came to talking about surgery was we said surgery.
Yeah.
The closest we came to talking about a medication is we said medication. We spent as much time talking about whole food nutrition. We spent as much time talking about sleep, all these sorts of things, body composition, because what you said, April, as we know, we just all came back from ASMBS, is we have treated 1% of the population for 20 freaking years.
Mm-hmm.
This is not working.
Mm-hmm.
And we could do a whole nother podcast on why I think that is, the disconnect between primary care physicians and us, all sorts of things, the stigma, blah, blah, blah. So that's the facts. We've only treated 1%. We have medications now, and we now know that as high as 9% of the U.S. population has tried a GLP-1. Many didn't even qualify for it, but so how many of those were obese and non-obese? Nobody really knows, right? But I looked at our team and I said, look, this is as good a time as ever for patients who are finally at least willing to talk about the idea of obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's how we see patients moving forward.
Yes.
If you have someone that calls and says, I want Dr. Smith and I got a Brinks truck, I'm going to pay cash for a SADE, you're going to say, okay, we can bring you in for an obesity consult. If you have someone that says, I want Mounjaro, we can take you in for obesity consult. But what you're going to find out is we're going to make sure every doctor in this area knows if your patient's just simply willing to talk about obesity and the fact of maybe I am willing to at least consider treatment, send them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What we have to do as surgeons is we have to make you all aware, and we've done this. We've had gatherings and events when we launched our second satellite clinic in Maysville, Kentucky. I looked in a room, 40-some people of orthopedic surgeons, GYNs, ER physicians, everybody. I said, look, I'll own this. For years, we had the luxury that people showed up ready to talk about surgery, and you saw me as a surgeon. That's not meeting patients where they're at anymore.
Mm-mm.
Meeting patients where they're at is I'm just willing to bring you in and have a conversation. It's my job to have the infrastructure to handle that. It's my job to navigate that patient. I don't care if it takes 3 years for them to pick a treatment and maybe they never pick one. But that's where we have to see people. And my hope is that we're going to see more practices take that approach. I've had a lot of physicians come to me because volumes have been impacted by GLP-1s. I'm like, it's not because surgery is not impactful. It's just patients want to be navigated differently.
Yeah.
You don't want to go to your cardiologist the first time you've ever sat down with a cardiologist because your heart rate gets out of whack and say, okay, it's time to put a pacemaker in. Whoa.
Yeah.
So this isn't really a new concept. We just simply say, if you're willing to talk about obesity, we've got a spot for you. Come chat. What's interesting is we're finding more and more people, because they're educated about everything, coming out of this and like, yeah, I'm ready to take the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Believe it or not, we're seeing a higher percentage of people who are choosing surgery over meds because they have really good information. They're comparing them. They're deciding, do I really want to be on a medicine for the rest of my life, insurance, all those other things. But it started off where no one even talked about surgery to them.
Yeah.
We just talk about, here's all your options.
Yeah.
And so, what, like you said, call out to everybody. If you call someplace and they're not willing to just let you talk about obesity, then find another place.
Yes.
But all I ask is go somewhere that they have all the options to offer you.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to not have a biased opinion by a provider who only offers one or the other. Could be surgery by itself. Could be medicine by itself. But they have options where we can help you. We don't care which one you pick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I would challenge people when they listen to this podcast as we prepare for the series is just ask yourself this question. If you truly believe that the controllables, such as eating whole foods over processed foods, sleep, exercise, tracking your nutrition, we're not talking about calories particularly, tracking your nutrition. If you think that's hogwash, this may not be the place for you. I don't think anybody with any education would argue that it matters to some extent. If you just acknowledge that it matters a little bit, please keep going through this with us. And I think you'll learn how much it actually matters.
Yeah.
We could not have said it better ourselves. We are so thankful that we are going to continue this conversation with you to really go through all of these levers, right? Because surgery, medication, that is the treatment for obesity, but these levers are what keeps whatever tool you choose sharp. And that's really what this lever series is all about. Let's learn about them. Let's control the controllables, and let's come up with a game plan for how we can actually pull those levers each and every day. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Friends, if you have a question that you would like to ask Dr. Smith about the levers or about anything that we talked about today, just leave it in the comments below, or you can send us an email to hello@barination.org. Make sure you join the email list so you know when all of these new episodes pop up on your feed so that you can watch and interact with them. And Dr. Smith, of course, we're going to see you back here, and maybe we'll go live on a social platform so we can interact and answer your questions in real time. But we are just so honored and so thankful that you're going to be joining us for this Levers series. It's really powerful.
Yeah. No, I'm excited, and I'm glad that it obviously got some traction, and that was the whole point, is just to create a conversation. So it did its job. Let's just continue it.
It did its job. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, friends, share this episode so other people know that the Lever series is kicking off today. We appreciate you spreading the word and just ensuring that everybody knows that this education is available. All right, friends, Dr. Smith, if they want to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
Practice website, you can go to Kentucky Bariatric You can follow me on social media, both on Instagram. I think it's Dr. Eric Smith _ I don't know. I think it's Dr. Eric Smith _ Just search me and look for the bald guy. And then on TikTok, I think it's Dr. Eric Smith. I think we didn't have to use the underscore there. Somebody stole the one without the underscore. But, go to both of those places. Lots of good information on there.
Yep. And we'll link it down below. And friends, we also have a guide, how to find an obesity medicine specialist, that really does everything that Dr. Smith did. So if you are interested in finding somebody new, it's linked in the show notes as a PDF document. Nothing to sign up for. You just download it so that you can access it and utilize it. But no, there are thousands and thousands of providers out there that are excited to help you start to treat your disease of obesity differently. So now is the time. Let's stop waiting. Let's start moving in action.
Yeah.
All right, friends. We'll see you soon on the next episode. Talk to you later. Bye, Dr. Smith.
Bye.
See ya.
The Barination podcast is brought to you by the generous donors who believe this work matters. Listeners and viewers just like you. Johnson & Johnson and the Texas Center for Bariatrics and Advanced Surgery, led by Dr. Joe Cribbins. Because of them, this show exists. Because of you, it can reach even further. Someone is going to find this podcast on a bad day or right when they need it most. and you can be the reason it's there. Your donation to the Barination Foundation helps us advance metabolic wellness for people living with obesity through evidence-based education, stigma-free support, and real connection in the moments that shape our daily life. To join the people already making this possible, visit barination.org.
Thanks for joining us. This podcast is a proud production of the Barination Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit.
Our mission is to advance metabolic wellness for those living with the disease of obesity by bringing you evidence-based education, stigma-free support, and meaningful connections in the exact moments that shape your daily life.
A quick reminder that the information discussed in this episode is not medical advice. Be sure to speak with your personal medical provider about your specific health needs. Thank you for listening or watching, and we'll catch you on the next episode.